Welcome to the Friday Live random access art making stream of consciousness. What do I mean by the term, which I call RAM for short? It's not an official art term, but what I mean by it is using random or accidental marks and effects in artworks to bring unconscious images up into consciousness. RAM reminded me of computer lingo because of the term random access, which seemed to me to be descriptive of how the process works. And the memory aspect of the computer terminology seemed relevant too, because, of course, items in our unconscious are laid down or stored as short term or long term memories, just as our conscious memories are. Wouldn't it be nice to be able to access some images that have some significance of some kind to us from our unconscious and bring them back up to consciousness so we can create art from them? Maybe even a new type of art or a new individual breakthrough in one's own art through a random process like the paint pour acrylics technique I was doing this week. I'm going to show you those pieces, but I'm also going to try to show how random stuff that's produced by means not fully under the artist's control can bring up interesting connections to meanings which may be unique to each artist or even each viewer, but which can also be brought even further through more work to explore those connections or associations with images which perhaps weren't intentionally created when the artwork was begun, but which emerged during the process. This could be a very exciting thing to explore for an artist. And indeed, we artists love being out at sea, lost, since it allows us to dream while on a journey of exploration. The art that I made during the week using this paint pouring technique for the first time reminded me strongly of a movie I once saw in the 70s and have watched many times since called Solaris by Andrei Tarkovsky. It was a sci fi movie, and there was a weird ocean in space that appeared, which turned out to be a kind of ocean of memory. If you like philosophical sci fi, and art, do have a look for this movie or any of Tarkovsky's other movies for that matter, because they're visually very beautiful and very thoughtful too. You'll think about them long after seeing them. Really good art is a bit like that. Anyway, the way the ocean moved, the way the ocean moved was was like an ocean. It was like an ocean of memory. And the paint pour process, which I had to keep turning and shifting the canvas around for to keep it evolving into whatever I thought it might want to become, reminded me of that ocean. And the ocean in the movie seemed to be a metaphor for how memories evolved in the unconscious. As I worked away at the series of paint pour images produced over the course of a day, I could see images emerge from the abstract flowing shapes. This is what the human mind likes to do: make images that are figurative, out of things it sees. I suppose because we need to categorize things and name them to make sense of them and figure out which category they go into. This one, as I was making it, looked like a face at first. Then it started looking like the grain of a walnut bark. To me, that is. You might well see something different in it. And you're welcome to check out my last video upload about the paint pour session to find out what you see in the shapes at different points. I could have stopped at either of these points instead of continuing to tilt and move the picture, keeping the image flowing. But how mesmerizing the little ocean I'd made was, and how very interesting to watch the stuff that was bubbling up from my unconscious as the cells divided in the paint slowly from the silicone oil I'd added to the paint to create the lacy effect. The first painting I'd tried without adding the silicone oil, I called Nebula because it looked rather predictably like one. But although the next painting looked like a moon already after the test one with its walnut wood surface that had morphed from a face first, I started to think, could I do more with these afterwards? I liked the randomness because of the technique of pouring, but I loved the new figurative possibilities that had opened up as well. So could I either work over them or create something new from the shapes that I found there? And emphasize the things that I'd found in them, maybe. This, of course, isn't a new idea because artists like Max Ernst, a surrealist artist who did frottage images, had explored these possibilities. He used squashed paint to create new figurative forms, and the surrealists worked in this border territory between figuration and abstraction. Each artist brings something unique, though, and invents their own way of doing things, as well as their own personal imagery. So, this is a very attractive idea to me to work with some of the random forms I've created and try and pull some figurative things up from the ocean of my own unconscious to experiment and play around for a while with the images. I don't know what the results will be. That's part of the reason I'm so keen to do it. In art, it's important to follow strong urges to do things. And when you find something that's interesting to you, you're already halfway there, halfway to creating something which someone else might find interesting too. So let's go with the flow and keep experimenting to see what we come up with. I hope you enjoyed looking at some of the pictures. I'm going to have a little mess around with them now and talk about this idea more. That first little section was a bit scripted because um, it was a difficult idea to explain, but it was this randomness that I liked about things, but I want to push that randomness further as well. So that's what I want to do with stuff. Um, some of it isn't quite dry, Some of the pieces that I did during the week are done on paper and they're getting there, but they're not completely dry. So one of the techniques I had been talking about was doing working over things. Now I can't do that with all of them. Some of them I can, but this one, for example, is dry. And the kind of thing that I had been talking about doing was pushing basically the figurative possibilities in them a little bit further. So they already kind of look like things, right? And I do like the nebulousness of them and the abstractness of them. And, they have that spooky, flowing kind of quality to them. This one is less flowing because I think this is one of the frottage ones. You turn it upside down and you mush it down into the paint. The leftovers paints from the pour that I had, I did this way. You can, and as I say, there's an upload of that video if you want to see the process for the pour. They were done with these acrylic paints, which a couple of the colors had three-color pour, and I did a two-color pour and a three-color pour, and two of the colors were metallic colors, but you have to mix in a pouring medium with them to make them a bit more fluid. And this was the paint that I had left over, and you're still coming up with really nice textures. And this is where somebody like Max Ernst, if you look up the term frottage and Max Ernst, you see how he did it. He did a really nice painting called, I think it's called Europe After the Rain. And he made all sorts of interesting little figures out of these abstract forms. But to me, this one, if I just sit and look at it for a while, this looks like a beautiful structure that's like a mountain or a building in the distance, or it puts me in mind of the Isle of the Dead. And that's a painting by, oh, I can't remember who, Redon or somebody like that. And it's a picture of an island in the distance with rocky cliffs. And this reminds me of that a little bit. But some of these random kind of paintings remind me a little bit of specific things, but I'm randomly accessing my unconscious and bringing up these images. For somebody else, it might remind them of that, but I'm sort of toying with the idea of pushing it further in the direction that I want the viewer to be reminded of. But maybe with some of them, I don't mind if they stay a little bit abstract. And this is actually very nice painting left this way because it is hovering between wanting to be this mountain or building and just being an abstract shape so successfully already that it only needs a couple of things done to it. And what I would do to this one is mix up a little bit extra of this color here and just bring this pale tone down a little bit. And I don't think I'll mess around that much with what would be the sea in this painting, because balancing the thing between the random effect and figurative is a very delicate matter, I think, because you can lose the kind of magic of the ambiguity of the meaning very easily by working over something very figuratively. I don't want to go there, but I just want to take out some of, not even those, they're kind of interesting. I kind of like those. Maybe knock them back down a little bit to that kind of shade, but this one, knock it back down further. Or maybe even do a gold outward thing like a sun. So I'll show you on this particular one how I'm thinking. We'll just get an old lid for mixing up colour. So this is the kind of process I'm thinking of. But I think this would be, I'm sharing this because I think it's a nice process to show other people about how you access more stuff from your particular sensibility in art, if you know what I mean. And what happens when we're working figuratively sometimes for a long time is that we end up with the same imagery getting used a lot. Now, I don't know whether I'm going to add any purple into the very middle of that at all. So this is quite a reflective thing because I am trying to go down into the depths and the unconscious, the imagery in the unconscious. You have to be quiet and kind of listen into it and be very receptive to what's happening, I think. So I'm going to do this first. And that is really bright compared to the rest, but it's got a little kind of a Turner-esque feel to it that I like. And although I don't want to work it too much, I don't mind doing little touches because I'm trying to push it more in a direction. But I want to keep it, I have it keep the sort of organic magic of the random effects because it's produced in a very natural kind of a way, which is terrific. I love that. So I'm trying to interfere with them, with these paintings, not too much. So you see the way that color is already slightly better, I feel. I'm going to add a little bit of black because I'm going to come up around here. The black isn't metallic. There's one other painting I'm going to mess with as well, and I'm going to show you. And then I'm going to mess with some of the blob paintings. So some of this live stream is, let me have a test paper. Some of this live stream is very organized, the bit at the beginning, scripted, as I say, and some is intuitive and random and gone with the flow. And that's art for you. It's balancing between chaos and organization. So you've got the chthonic, if you like, um, chaotic elements, and you, as the artist, are organizing those elements. Now, I like that, but as I say, I don't want to do a whole lot. I just want to have that suggestion of a sun. And I don't know whether to get rid of the white or not. I might make a wave effect here. Very, very little I'm doing to this one because I really like it as it is. And you see, in the right kind of frame, I would be tempted not to frame that big heavy frame just under a glass frame that sort of clips some way on would be quite nice. Under the right frame, that would look really super. And surface textures on her are really beautiful as well. I love that one. The other one, I kind of know what I want to do with is, if I can find, I had it out a minute ago. I put them all back down, but I'm not sure where. This one, which isn't quite dry yet. I had several thoughts about this one, but the first thought that I had about it was that when I did the pour, I deliberately left these curves because I liked the planetary look of it, right? And a lot of people who do those pores. And here's the kit that I used. This was a little special kind of an art kit. It was about €10 worth. Um, but there are kits. Montmartre is the one I saw online that I thought looked quite good. It got good reviews. Haven't used it myself, but this is, I only just tried this out really for the first time. But I liked this planetary look, and a lot of people that do this pour art, I've seen street artists doing things, and mostly they do it with spray paints when I've seen them do it, but they get lovely planet effects and everything. But I do like that effect, and this is why it suggested the Tarkovsky film Solaris. Um, don't bother watching the other one with George Clooney in it at all. I have no idea why they remade it. The Tarkovsky one is just visually so beautiful, and it's an interesting story and everything as well. But it did suggest that sci-fi theme, and the viewer is like a space traveler, and that's what you are. You're in this kind of random access art making. You're traveling into your unconscious to say to make decisions and everything, because you're not immediately working with the figures. But what tends to happen with your mind, which I said earlier in the little intro scripted bit, was that your mind makes up figurative stuff. We have a tendency to see figurative things in order to categorize things. That's how our brains are built. But in this kind of teetering between things, this is already really like a planet. I'm toying with the idea of having this like either some sort of spaceship or a comet, but it would have to be, I think, painted over that. So I have to wait for that to be completely dry. But I can do some work on those edges of the planet. And there's a particular color that I think I want to go for here. And that's that cosmos color there, which is a very dead blue gray. Somewhere between that color and that color. This is just a house paint mixer, but it helps me get colors. So might be able to use this purple, but I also have, and that cosmos color made me think of it, an ink that I really love. So I might mess around with the ink with that one. And then after I do that, this is only a small job because I have to wait for that bit to be dry if I want to do that other little bit of work. So I'm pushing it out from being a totally random painting, but a painting which would remind you of a planet because I have that curve in it, into being slightly more figurative. But I don't want to push it so far that it's really highly descriptive. But the minute if I start doing something spaceshipy or comedy here, you know, there's a figurative narrative going on. So you have to be aware of that and sensitive to that. So here's the other thing that I have color wise that I love. Look at that. That is in fact, I like that on its own. That's my ink, which I bought recently, and I absolutely love it. Diamine is the brand, and this is called Aurora Borealis, fittingly. And I am hoping that even though I have acrylic on here, it'll go on okay over it because I'll have to mix it up with acrylic if it doesn't. And I might come in here and fix up the edge of that planet to make the curve perfect, but that's not going to happen until that paint is 100% dry. So I don't want to mess it up too much. But just to show you how the addition of a couple of little bits on a random painting um, changes everything. And I've let that pour go right over the edge and everything. It's a bit hard to stop them going over the edge, I would think. But I like that quality. But obviously, that's really still very thick paint. so it needs ages to dry. But the surface texture on this one is so beautiful as well. The results of the pour were so much better than I'd hoped for. I'm just really, really pleased. Now that can give you quite a dark blue, so I don't know how dark I want to go. And some of the primer is resisting the ink, so we'll see how much actually sinks in properly. But it's such a beautiful color that I love it. And it's going to change the painting so much when that white comes back off the paint. So I really thought carefully about putting this color down. See the way it's slightly resistant to it. And to do a little bit of work to get it to accept that ink. The primer probably has a PVC element in it, a PVA element in it, sorry, um, which might be repelling the ink slightly, but it seems to be taking it all right. It's just taking a minute to take. And I do like the ink because it's preserving the grain that I'm trying to touch bits of painting that aren't actively wet. And it's such a beautiful colour. And this ink has a very, very slight bit of glitter in it as well. Tiny little glittery particles that are very subtle. And it's such a good quality paint. I'd love to get other colours. And there's a pink I really, really want as well. And ink will come into what I'm doing in a minute as well, because I want to talk about pushing these random things into figurative directions in another way. So that's one way to work with the painting and, you know, paint more elements on, or you could come along, depending on what drawing medium you used, you could come along with sort of oil pencils or oil pastels or something and work on that as well quite successfully, because it's a shiny acrylic finish. So you have to have the right medium to go over that. But I want to keep the lovely subtlety of all this flow. So I don't want to do a lot, but I will wait for it to dry and then I will do a little tiny bit of something here. But I like that blue very much. That's working for me. That's a very pretty. And it does suggest that planet thing in a, I don't think corny kind of way. It's a nice subtle thing, you know. I quite like it. And definitely. This one isn't bad, but compared to this was my first painting before I bought the pouring materials. This is a pour, but without the cell division kind of thing that creates those effects. Um, and this is nice, but this is more uh, predictable kind of an art type of art that I've seen a lot of people doing with pours, and this is why I call this one nebula. Because they're always called something like nebula. I feel the other one, I'll call the other one Solaris. What the hell? Because I love that film so much. Had it on DVD. Everything. I don't have people play a DVD anymore, but I like the DVD. Not George Clooney, okay? Tarkovsky. Um, so that one's called Solaris, okay? And it's very so. Uh, Now, once this, I'm going to be doing fairly minimal work on. And if I just move this dish, this is quite a large one. These are all done the same day because it's a very quick process. And really, I see a lot of people doing these and they kind of leave it after that and don't do anything else to it. That's a legitimate way to go, and that's fine. But, uh, I was looking at them and I was sort of saying to myself, oh, that would be a lovely picture if I had done this instead of that. This one, if I can show you from the right distance, I'm going to try and go up a little bit to see, can we see it better? I haven't dared take tape off from the edges of these. I have masking tape on. Some of them I'm leaving the masking tape on, but probably not this one. So in a few days when it's drier, probably some of the masking tape is going to come off. Some masking tape could stay on, like, if I liked kind of that bit there, that could stay on if I wanted to. And there's nothing to stop me when I take this is paper, this one. The last thing we were looking at was on canvas. Um, there's nothing to stop me if I wanted to taking this off the board, and then if I want to cut into bits of it, mounting it on another sheet of paper and continuing to work on it that way. I could do that if I wanted to, but I don't know that I will. So I don't know. Am I going to go for? I probably won't go for the blue again on this one. Probably what I'll do. I don't know if it's going to accept ink again, but I'm going to try an ink trick here and just see what happens, because this was the area up here that I wasn't entirely happy with, that I sort of thought to myself, I like what the rest of the painting is doing, because to me, the thing it was bringing up from my unconscious was it went through different stages, right? And you can see that in the other paint pour video upload. But this area here, the way it settled in the end, and I kind of, in a way, I sort of pushed it to nearly overwork, because this was the test piece where I was testing what the materials could do, because it was my first ever paint pour. Um, it settled into, from first looking like a face to going into a walnut wood effect to looking to me like mountain range with sort of carved out area here of all that kind of silty stuff that comes down and carves out valleys. So this one, I'll probably end up calling it after a John Grant song, which I can't remember the name of. But it's got lines about carving out valleys. And I really like the song, and it reminds me of that song. So kind of when you're working with art in a random sort of way and accessing random memories or images from your unconscious. And this is what I'm trying to get. I'm trying to get spontaneously get images come up from my unconscious, make them conscious, and then work with them. You're going to get associative thinking happening. And I'm okay with that. So I'm associating that with, the John Grant song and everything to get my title. But some of the things in this are just terrific. I'm absolutely loving sections of this. So actually, it might be nice to have that background there instead of it being white, very dark, maybe. I don't know. I'd either have it totally white or have it really, really dark. I don't know which, because they are mountain ranges, you see. So I, my screen went black for a second. I don't know why. Sorry about that. I'm going to try ink, and some of the things I've done are going to repulse the ink because the pouring medium that I had is has that PVA in it, PVA glue. So we'll see what happens. If I can find the same brush, I knocked it over somewhere. There it is. It has the residue of some of the blue on it. I'm going to keep some of that. So I'm going quite dark with this. Ooh. So we'll see what happens. And of course, things settle. And during the pouring process, I'm just going to paint over the tape. I don't know if that tape is going to come off, because the painting will end there if the tape comes off, or whether it's going to become part of the painting. I might just cut it off from here, I'm thinking, because there are some things up here that are like the edge of the mountain that I quite like. Now, I would like to go in there and emphasize some of the lines, but that's going to have to happen in acrylic. But I'm just trying to work up the background. So I'm still working in a semi-random way, but I have turned it into something figurative and want a tiny bit more of that blue ink for my aurora borealis. And I'm sort of floating between the random and the figurative on the border. Now, nothing is going to stick to that. If I do that, that's going to come off, I think. So that's why I have to work over those bits in acrylics. It's really only the white spaces that that color would go into. See? So a way of joining up that blue, greeny blue, with the rest of the picture would be this. And I'm doing the same down here because I'm trying to unify the picture a bit with, can I go out a bit more to show you the very edges of it? There. See that? I'm getting the blue down here as well. And I might get brown and blue down there because it's dragging the eye too far down. So some of the work I'm doing is to try and improve the composition slightly as well. So that the eye is going the way I want it to go in the picture. And I might get a little bit of. So those acrylics, they're just the ordinary acrylics before the pouring medium went in. So I can just use them in the ordinary way. Or the other thing I can do, which might be useful to me, is I have an acrylic varnish. So because this surface here is shiny, if I paint in ordinary acrylics, the other bits are going to be not shiny. So adding a little bit of varnishing to the paint is going to give it the same finish as the rest of the paint. I mean, you could varnish it afterwards, but so I might do a little draggy effect in the sky to just lift part of the black at the top and have a sort of cloud at the top of the mountains effect. And I'm thinking of kind of it's like a sort of futuristic Mount Fuji moment. So let's try a dragged effect and just see what happens. It's kind of interesting. I actually like the way it's sitting on the masking tape is quite nice, isn't it? I mean, obviously, masking tape has glue on the back of it. So, you know, if you wanted your painting to last centuries, that that masking tape might degrade after like century one, but it should actually last pretty well. I'm going to lose the edge here very slightly and try not to overwork, but just slightly soften down some bits. And then I'm going to do another little thing just before I leave that. And I have so many paintings out at the moment, they're all sliding around. I'm not doing an awful lot to these, you'll notice. They're just little things. So this is what I've got, an acrylic medium here that I'm going to mix for, oh, it doesn't, it's got a skin under. Okay, so that should behave slightly differently again now with this on it. And then I'll probably go over that whole section at some stage with the varnish. But, you know, there's some nice, getting some nice texture going in that area now. I don't want to leave you down that close because I'll be hitting the camera with the brush. I'm going to get the sweet spot on this camera. So, I don't know if that's maybe a bit too blue. Dirty down the color a little bit. And it can be a bit tricky, I think, to work with these totally randomly produced effects and then come along afterwards and be adding in stuff that's not random. I'm terribly tempted to put gold leaf on that. Do you like gold leaf? Hang on. Yeah, I don't break out the gold leaf too often, but this wants gold leaf on it. And here's a way I often do it. Watch this. I think this will be nice. Just a little tiny bit. Sticking to the wrong bit. And then bit that's wet there. So just little flecks, tiny little flecks. I don't want to overdo that. A couple of little flecks of that because it will catch the light beautifully. And in fact, I like just that because that's got a little moon feeling about it as well, hasn't it? Hang on now, I want to get a bit fancy here. I'm going to get a white acrylic or a pale acrylic out. Change the color again because I want to put in, look at that white there, for example. I want to put in a sprinkle of clouds over the moon. So it's very figurative. This one is wanting to go very figurative. I just have to find some white. And I'm mixing white with that acrylic medium again and the other colors because I'm dirtying it down a little bit. Don't want it completely white. Blue takes over. The minute you put blue in, it starts taking. That's kind of an interesting color. But I want it to happen with varnish in it. Now I could have that really watery and do the effect that I had here was done with it watered down with PVA glue and water mixed. But I'm opting to do a scumbling job here, which is dragging. It's not really scumbling because it's not dry paint, but I only want a tiny bit of that because I want it to turn into a. I don't want to turn into a totally figurative painting. Although, it has gone quite a. It already wanted to be figurative in my mind. But the thing is, somebody else might not have seen this mountain range. It might have been only me that could see the mountain range. And I am trying to be slightly random. I'm not 100% happy with that. But I'm kind of aware and want to move on because I want to do one more thing before I go. And I've only 10 minutes to go. Oh, that's better. Prefer that. So, like, I'm still trying to use the random effects a little bit. I'm trying to have everything have an interesting texture. So those clouds have a bit of an interesting texture to them. Just wanted obscuring a little bit of gold. I only wanted catching that gold from. And I do like the way the paint is sitting on that underneath uh, shiny varnished surface because it's got a nice texture. I'm trying to exploit that nice texture. And you can be too careful as well, so be a bit quicker in order to be not too careful. All right, so I mean, I could do some work back in here, but I don't know that I want to. But what I'll probably do is let this dry, and then I'll do a brown glaze over it in an acrylic brown, so that that blue there and the little highlights white and everything are pushed back that little bit more. But I like it. I only put a tiny bit of gold on it, but it's enough to suggest that whole mountain thing going. So that is gonna lose some of the edge there. Have to wait till it's slightly drier to do that. And the other thing I might do is do something along the edge, a bit of black, something that looks like ink but isn't. But I might delineate some kind of black down here. I could even do it with um a Sharpie. This kind of thing. You see, because that'll stick on top of things, okay? So just doing that little bit more drawing on it, you see, to emphasize stuff that was happening on it. But it adds something else to the sort of random sections. So over the next day or so, I might work on that. But there won't be like huge amounts of work done on that. It'll be just a little bit of work. But you see where I'm going. And now that I have the pen out, and I like the drawing marks beside these. So now that I have the pen out, you can see where I'm going in terms of working further with things, because the next thing that I want to work further with, ooh, I love this. I might bring that whole flow downwards into the drawing, you see, because it's very like a lava flow. So I'm just sort of emphasizing some stuff that's already going on. You see, so I'll keep working away on that. But before I go, I want to show you another smaller pieces that are still very random. Like some pieces I'm not really going to work on. I like them just random as they are. I think that's very nice, just as it is. I don't want to do. You don't have to bring them further if you don't want to. See, when you're doing these random things, and when you're random accessing um, art making, um, your unconscious, it does have images in it, right? That it wants things to be figurative, but it also has the capacity to be okay with non-figurative things, because in nature there are all these kind of wonderful wood grains and patterns in nature that um, visually um, art like this can be very appealing to us, because it can remind us of those wonderful patterns that are in nature, and it can have a fascinating quality, like watching water flow, or you know. But this particular piece, I like its possibilities for it generating more work, okay, that is semi figurative kind of thing, that something figurative might happen with. Even though I think this is a beautiful piece left alone as it is, and I'm not going to take the tape off this either, because I like the color very much. I like that yellow very much. So that's a lovely piece. And that would be beautiful framed in, like if I had loads of money, I'd frame it in a walnut frame, flat walnut frame, very polished, would be beautiful. It's just such an enjoyable. The purple paint that I got, that mauve color, I thought that's not going to be very nice in the pictures, but when it mixed in with the black, it actually was very beautiful. You know, they just gave you the three colors in the kit, and I was thinking about leaving that color out. So glad I didn't, because isn't that wonderful? Because it looks like a natural formation, and yet the mauve is kind of pulling it back from just being about like a wood grain or something. But you see these little items here. Uh, I could. Sorry, I'm trying to bring the camera in closer again, and I want to put the cover back. I can come along with my sketch pad and a pen, and there's another piece I tucked in from a while back that I did in watercolors that I plan to draw on, but this piece, this is sad. This piece would be nice for generating another kind of a free form drawing from. So if I can find my pen, I'll show you just quickly what I mean. So this way of continuing to work with the same piece, right, can bring you off in another direction again. And I like, you know me, I like working with inks. So I could do a very nice little ink drawing there, and then even come along with my sepia tones, watercolors or inks, or my lovely blue that I have there, or whatever colors I feel like using, and do more work with it. So I could be quite happy working away on a drawing of it, um, exploring some of the random stuff that had happened and bringing it somewhere else. Because changing medium like that is going to change what you end up with, and have you drawing or painting in a way that you wouldn't normally, and perhaps even making new shapes or marks that you wouldn't normally. So you're finding new letters in your personal art alphabet. And they're coming up from your unconscious. Even though they're random things, you're creating what you're seeing as well. So you're co creating with whatever thing it is you've made. So I could keep drawing there and decide which elements of the thing I really liked. I like some of the curves in this one, and like stuff like that. I could get my India ink out for and just flood the paper and see how the watercolor, the flooding India ink effect, what kind of a blob it gives me, and it could generate a different shape again. So the art keeps moving, you see. And I might decide I want to have it like a contained shape within the page. I like those three pieces there. But I might like to do this one in just a very dark sepia and black and see how that looks. Okay, so I'm not going to work the whole thing, but that is an interesting direction to go, isn't it? And obviously, that's something you can get lost in. It doesn't have to go in a figurative direction, but you might see shapes and things like the mountain one, um, and that kind of weird island with the architectural feature on it. I definitely saw something figurative going on there. Then I have other pieces that are frottage, uh, pressing down on paint that I did with the leftover paint I had at the end of the pour. Those pieces, pen isn't ideal to do it. The Sharpie pen is better. I would like a thinner one to be able to do this, but you know, acrylic paint or pen or whatever, and I can come along and I can work into those and do things in there, you see. Or I could come along with, I have these oil pencils, and I could bring out light and dark shapes within that as well, more in a more grease medium sort of way, or oil pastels or whatever you have yourself, you see. So you can use a few different things, and this would be maybe the start of that process, or I might just work this one with, might be happy just working it with the Sharpie. I also have a white acrylic pen as well, which I like using. So I'm finding lovely shapes in this. And it's like a lovely planty, seaweedy kind of frond. So that's my personal imagery because I did a piece earlier in the year, didn't I? And maybe it was last year I did this. I can't remember. I tend not to date things. That was an underwater piece. Had loads of glitter and things going on, and I love seaweedy things. So that's part of my personal imagery. Somebody else would find something else in it, you know. Well, I'm emphasizing some of the things, or I could go around to some of the textures and find shapes in there. So you end up getting terribly interesting shapes. Some really nice shapes in here. You can do as much work or as little work as you want on that, but I don't know, will that pen work over it? No, that pen doesn't work over it, but I like the idea of a thinner line on that. So grease pencil might be something I would work into that with. So I like those just left on the white background. You know, I can make these kind of weird little things in their own rights as well. And it's like a little, some sort of little drawing of a plant. So these are all very nice things for opening up your creativity and discovering new techniques as well that happened randomly, but can be incredibly interesting for you. So I'm actually just looking for, I'm looking for my white just to finish showing you the white, how white acrylic pen would be useful on top of that. Of course, I can't find it when I want it. I can only find a silver pen. I have silver and gold. I'm going with the seaweed analogy and making blobby bits on it. So you can keep working away with things, you see. I think I will find my silver one though. Or my white one maybe. This is kind of the stalk of the seaweed. Okay, so you could keep working away like that and pushing things. This one has very fine detail bits, and I could have a lot of fun with that if I can get a thin enough grease pencil to stick to those. Otherwise, it's a paint, and I don't like drawing in paint quite as much. But there are a lot of different things you can explore with them, And a lot of my stuff went in kind of the same direction, but like we were in outer space with that one, and we didn't stay in outer space, did we? Because we came sort of down to Earth. We've got kind of these sort of ones which are quite a landscapey, flowy looking thing as well. And you can imagine how they could translate very well into prints or drawings in a sketchbook where you're using these as the reference for drawings. So, if you like the idea of leaving the original thing as is, and I like that piece, I'd like to leave that piece as it is, but I might like to also draw it. So I've got all these like weird megalithic shapes turned up that are square. These two pieces seem to relate. So if you're doing work like that, definitely give yourself time to look at the work as well when you finish doing it and enjoy looking at it, because it'll bring up all these other possibilities for Um, new work, new work that you know you could find really, really enjoyable. That it's gonna open up completely new vistas and routes to bringing stuff up from your unconscious into conscious imagery. And you might end up with results that are abstract, or you might end up with figurative work. But it's a very interesting thing to do. So I hope you got something out of that and enjoyed it. And I hope you liked the special edition podcast style with the little monologue I had at the beginning. I won't monologue all the time. The different live streams call for different approaches. But this one I thought needed some kind of explanation of my thinking at the beginning, because the rest of it was very abstract in some ways, wasn't it? Because the unconscious, making sense of things in the unconscious, is a very interesting thing to do, but it's not always easy to access your random memory. Okay, thanks for joining me. Bye.